talk about how you became interested in doing what you're doing now, and how your conditions a number of years ago kind of led to this point.
Well, I was pharmaceutically grown, raised by
Sure.
doctors in hospitals rather than wolves in the jungle. Had I been raised by wolves in the jungle, I would have been healthier. So because of that, I was vaccinated as a child. I had some adverse vaccine reactions, even to the smallpox vaccine, which they used to
Really?
give. They don't do so much anymore. But yeah, I had really a horrible reaction where I revaccinated myself from my arm right onto the temple of my forehead, and one of those, if you're old enough to remember the pox that would grow out, and I had severe head pain, migraines times 1,000. I couldn't move my head. It was so painful. Those were some of the issues. I had gastrointestinal problems early on. I had skin rashes, skin conditions that would pop up behind my ears, behind my elbows and knees. I would scratch till they bled uncontrollably, which were always met by modern medicine. My dad was a pharmaceutical rep. His brother was a doctor, so we duly, the drugs, they were there for us. I had lots of antibiotics because I had sinus infections, chronic ear infections. I had throat, the streptococcus, strep throat infections all the time. I had all of that. And then in my even young years in elementary school, borderline, I was around 5th or 6th grade, I was diagnosed with inflamed tendons, tendinitis. What is a kid doing with inflamed tendons? And they were giving me non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, right? Also steroidal, draining the water off of my knee. I was in a brace because it was so painful I couldn't walk on it for time. I ended up taking up swimming, which gave me some outlet as a young person to be able to do. I mean, I was active, but I had all of these ailments. I became the poster boy for allergies. Just about every allergy known to man. I went to the allergy doctor. Right? He was a friend of my uncle's from medical school. Okay, got to be a good guy. We ended up putting his kids through college, I'm sure. 10 years, 10 years of allergy shots. Could have been the boy in the plastic bubble with all the things that I was allergic to. Respiratory, sinus congestion, could never breathe out of my nose, borderline asthma. I continued with, let's say, over-the-counter drugs, right? The Dimetapp, Benadryl. I'm trying to remember back to all of these things. One of the ones they had to reformulate because it was killing people. Phenylpropylalanine, I think, PPA was in it. They reformulated, I think, one of the Benadryls. I feel lucky to be alive. I did inhalers, the nasal sprays that they said don't do for more than 3 days. You'll get addicted. It'll make it worse. And shots and shots and shots and shots. Now, through my teen years, I had so much acid indigestion back when they had Alka-Seltzer and Tums and Rolaids. I was popping those things like candy just to get by. I felt so awful, with every meal I ate. Didn't matter what I ate. I had all of these things. And at the point of, I guess the turning point for me was in university. I was studying, the pre-medical program because I always knew as a little kid, as far back as I can remember, I said, I'm going to grow up, when they ask your kids, what are you going to be when you grow up? I said, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a healer. I am here to help people to get well. Now, the only model I had in my life was modern medicine, Western doctors. And they had pretty much abused me and drugged me my whole life, and I was having my doubts about this, but it was all I wanted to do. I knew that's what I had to do. And so at this point in my life, I'm asking the docs at a major university where I was, I said, Doc, man, I've been sick my whole life. I've had allergies. I'm taking the shots. I even had surgery as a teenager to open up the holes of my nose bigger. They said, Robert, you have a deviated septum. I was like, ooh, that sounds bad. What do you do, Doc? Well, let's open it up. So they opened up the holes of my nose bigger, and all of that congestion, guess where it went? It filled bigger holes. Well, nothing that was curative in reality. And so in this case, I'm just desperate. I was like, come on, guys, help me out here. I've done everything you told me. Will I ever be well? And they said, first and foremost, Robert, we'll be honest with you. We don't know why you're sick. We don't know why you have your allergies. And I was like, well, thank you for your honesty, but didn't breed a lot of confidence, right? And so I think they could see on my face that I was leaving and not coming back. I'm not coming back. This is ridiculous. If I break an arm and I need it set, okay. But you guys are just drugging me. I don't feel good. I'm tired. I'm excited. I'm fatigued. I'm a kid, barely. But where was I going to go next? And as I was leaving, they said, like, one last ditch effort. Robert, don't go. There's hope for you. There's good news. And I'm thinking, well, what is it? Spit it out. I've been waiting 19 years for this good news. What do you wait? Tell me, what is it? And then they said this. Maybe one day you'll grow out of it. I'm not kidding you. If I was a woman, they'd said, go get pregnant, it'll go away, right? I was like, this is it. This is the last straw. You guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm leaving. But it was a very scary place for me because, I say worship the doctors, but they were, they were the ones that knew. And now I realized they didn't. What was I going to do? All I had left is pray to God, which, I believe in prayer, don't get me wrong, but it's like, strike me down with lightning and get me well. I don't know what to do here. And it wasn't until 4 or 5 years later that I met a homeopathic doctor who emigrated from Europe, and I began studying with him. This is a short version of it, for over 10 years. And within 2 weeks of that fateful meeting, I began to eat organically grown foods, back when it wasn't so easy.
Sure.
And began to detoxify my liver, began to work on my digestive health, reduce inflammation, because I had all of these inflammatory cascades. And 2 years later, I found that I had not only relieved symptoms, because that came fast, because with homeopathy you can relieve things, but healing is a little bit more intense. But I had unloaded, it was done. I didn't have them anymore. I could breathe freely in pollen season and smell the flowers. It was like, oh, this is great. And then I, was a new road path, and I realized that there wasn't only one type of doctor. There wasn't only an allopathic doctor, there was a homeopathic one as well. Herbal ones, all kinds of things were opened up to me. And so, 10 years of working side by side and seeing people, helping thousands, then ending up in the media and communicating it to thousands and thousands more, now perhaps hundreds of thousands around the world that are responding to this message of not only the natural healing, but the subject and topic of health freedom, the freedom to know the things that I had no idea, and most of us in the West never grew up knowing anything about.